I flew on Japan Airlines' Boeing 767. This domestic flight on Japan's flag carrier took me from the capital, Tokyo, to Hiroshima in the western part of the country. Just as a quick recap, I spent a week in Japan back in May with some good friends of mine, after flying there on WestJet's inaugural flight from Calgary. However, that was certainly not the only interesting flight we took on that trip, and our quite busy week here started with some time in Tokyo first. After arriving and spending the night at Haneda Airport, we made our way into the city to explore for ourselves. Tokyo is the largest city in Japan and is home to around 37 million people in the greater Tokyo area. That is basically the entire population of Canada all in one place, which is just insane to think about. The biggest culture shock for us Canadians, though, might have been the existence of a reliable transit system. Jokes aside, there's so much to like about Tokyo and just Japan in general. It's so organized and efficient, and everyone we talked to was very welcoming. Needless to say, we had a great first full day here, seeing the whole city from the Tokyo Skytree, and then taking in the sights at Shibuya Crossing, the busiest pedestrian crossing in the world. We did come back to Tokyo later in the week, but in the meantime, we wanted to go see as much of this amazing country as we could. Tokyo is served by two different commercial airports. Narita, about 60 kilometers from central Tokyo, handles international, cargo, and low-cost flights. Haneda Airport, however, more centrally located in Tokyo Bay, handles mainly domestic flights, and some international traffic too. As a result, Haneda is also the busiest airport in all of Japan, and this is where we spent most of the next day. The airport has three different terminals, Terminals 1, 2, and 3. Terminal 3 on the west side is used for international flights only, while Terminal 2 is used primarily by ANA. Terminal 1, meanwhile, is mainly used by Japan Airlines, or JAL, for all of their domestic flights. Those two carriers are the two biggest airlines in Japan, and I haven't had the chance to try either of them before. We chose Japan Airlines for today's flight, mostly because they happen to be flying a 767 on this route, and, well, we don't have any more of those flying passengers at home. We did get to try out ANA on some later flights though. As the largest airline in Terminal 1, JAL has a big presence pre-security, and in this part, they had this very automated check-in area. There are a bunch of these self-serve kiosks surrounding a desk where there's one person to help out. Fortunately, I figured things out once I found the English button and got my boarding pass for this evening's flight. Before that though, there is one other perk of Japanese airports that Canadian airports could only dream of. Terminal 1 at Haneda has lots and lots of shopping and food options before security in this beautiful central hall, and at the very top of that hall is an open-air observation deck. This stretches across part of the roof of Terminal 1, with an unbelievable view through some wires. This looks out towards the west, across runway 16 right 34 left, and with a view of Terminal 3 in the background. Earlier in the day, you could even see Mount Fuji as well. It's just so cool to see how normal watching airplanes is here, and Terminals 2 and 3 both have equally fantastic observation decks of their own. We spent most of this day plane spotting from the various terminals, and getting our fill of Japanese airlines since we wouldn't have a ton of time for that later on. Now, Japanese domestic flights themselves are also pretty interesting, at least from my perspective. Because of the sheer population density, a significant number of these short 1 to 2 hour flights are operated with wide-body aircraft. On some especially busy city pairs like Tokyo to Osaka, at some times of day you'll even see wide-body flights every 30 minutes. So, from an aviation geek's point of view, it's a great way to fly on a wide-body aircraft for a reasonable price, and to try out some new airlines in the process. With lots of photos and videos over the course of the day, we headed back down to make our way through security for this evening's flight. Even security here was remarkably efficient. No taking out laptops, liquids, or cameras like I usually have to do back at home. Today's gate was just a short walk from there, at gate number 10. Post-security, this part of Terminal 1 didn't seem to have too much to it, but I suppose for domestic flights, you would ideally not spend a lot of time here anyway. However, our flight was delayed about half an hour due to the gate still being occupied by the previous flight. As soon as the gate was clear, our 767 for this evening taxied in, this relatively new 2009 built 767-300ER, registered as Juliet Alpha 622 Juliet. This plane was delivered to Japan Airlines in May of 2009, making it only 14 years old, and one of the last few dozen or so passenger 767s built. Both Japan Airlines and ANA took delivery of a handful of new 767s around that time, which I find very interesting since they were both early adopters of the 787. It kind of shows just how dependable the 767 design is to have been delivering new passenger ones for 30 years straight. Even today, JAL still has 27 767s in their fleet, some of which still fly internationally across the Pacific. Although we did pick this flight just for the plane, like I said, I get the feeling they're not going anywhere in Japan anytime soon. The gate area soon filled up as our boarding time approached. I do have to say, I really like how much detail they go into on the screens above the gate, right down to the aircraft type, cabin, and the boarding process too. We booked seats in Class J on this flight, which seems to be JAL's equivalent of domestic premium economy. Although it gives you a wider seat at the front of the plane, it doesn't include priority boarding, so we still had to wait a bit. Eventually, all boarding zones were called, so let's go see what a Japanese domestic flight is like. Japan Airlines 767s have a couple different configurations, and this one had 5 first-class seats in a 2-1-2 layout. The next 7 rows are all Class J, with 42 recliner-style seats in a 2-2-2 configuration. My seat this evening is 10A, a window seat, unfortunately where there is a missing one. You can already tell just how comfortable these seats are though. There's more than enough legroom here, and you can still get this great engine view from the other window. This being one of the newest passenger 767s on the planet, the interior looks very Dreamliner-like, with colorful mood lighting, big overhead bins, but unfortunately no individual air vents. Since we were the last group to board, the doors were closed very shortly afterwards as the cabin crew welcomed us on board, first in Japanese and then in English.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome aboard Japan Airlines Flight 265 to Hiroshima Airport. We apologize for the delay in our departure. Your pilot is Captain Hiroshima.
We soon pushed back, and the engines were started as JAL's safety video played, on the overhead monitors and on the big screens at the front of the cabin. Talk about effective gate utilization too. Even before we stopped pushing back, another plane was towed into our gate immediately. With this wonderful send-off from our ground crew, which is actually typical of every flight in Japan, we were on our way. Here's the departure from Haneda, off of runway 16 left. What a view of Tokyo that was. Some departures from Haneda follow that sort of routing around Tokyo Bay for noise abatement and airspace restrictions, giving those of us on the left side quite the sight. After that, effectively 270-degree turn, our routing today took us westbound along Honshu, the main island of Japan, with a flight time of just over an hour. It also took us right past Mount Fuji, which we got a spectacular view of as it appeared from behind some clouds at the last minute. It was such a treat to see this iconic symbol of Japan from the air with just enough light left in the day. As we continued to climb, the cabin crew drew the curtains and started the in-flight service by bowing to the cabin. A selection of complimentary drinks were soon given out to Class J. I went for one of JAL's signature drinks, a peach and grape mix, which came in this nicely branded cup. It was very tasty, although that was the extent of the service. Given it is a domestic flight, and that this ticket only cost around 200 Canadian dollars, it does make sense. In that way, it seems the major selling point of Class J is the bigger seat, which had controls on the armrest for reclining or raising the footrest, and the tray table that folds out across your lap. On the other armrest is a large platform for drinks, and below that, on the inside of the seat, you can find a headphone jack, reading light button, and volume and channel controls, as well as the call button. Each seat also had a very comfortable headrest that was adjustable too. There's this roomy seatback pocket in front as well, which had quite a lot inside, starting with this very nicely designed disposal bag, an in-flight shopping pamphlet, instructions for connecting to the in-flight Wi-Fi, JAL's in-flight magazine, which had a very detailed fleet page, plus something I have to try at some point, and finally this smartly designed safety card for the 767. Meanwhile, the back of the plane has 205 economy class seats in the typical 232 layout, for a total of 252 seats on this 767. There is another domestic 767 configuration that doesn't have the 5 first class seats up front, which is what the seat map was originally showing on this flight. Also in the back is one lavatory near the overwing exits, plus 2 in the aft galley. This overwing one was surprisingly roomy and spotless too. There was also free Wi-Fi on board, which had in-flight entertainment built in with lots to choose from. There was even free internet access, although it was kind of slow to use. From then on, I tried to stay awake as the jet lag started to hit me. The cabin lights dimmed to a nice blue as we began our descent, and here's the arrival into Hiroshima Airport, landing on runway 28. So that was a domestic flight on Japan Airlines. Overall, this was a very enjoyable flight, with a comfortable seat, welcoming crew, and some beautiful scenery outside. Haneda Airport was super easy to travel through, despite it being one of the busiest in the world, and of course, those observation decks were amazing. On board, Class J was pretty decent too. The thing is, although it sounds like a domestic business class type of product, it's really more like premium economy with a bigger seat instead. For us though, it was still worth the extra price, especially to fly on a 767 again, and with such a great view like that. It was also interesting to take a domestic flight in this part of the world finally, and to see just how Japanese efficiency comes through in their aviation sector. Let's just say, things could be done a lot better back at home. Regardless, I had a great time traveling with Japan Airlines, and I'm glad I got another chance to fly on a 767. Thanks so much for watching this trip report on JAL's Boeing 767, and I'll see you next time.